Friendship with God. An uncommon dialogue. 3. If you and I are to have a true friendship, a working friendship, and not just a friendship in theory. That's important. Let's stop here and make that distinction, because that's an important distinction. Many people think that God is their friend, but they don't know how to use that friendship. They see it as a distant relationship, not a close one. Many more people do not even think of me as a friend at all. That's the sad part of it. Many people think of me as a parent, not a friend, and a harsh, cruel, demanding, angry parent at that. A father who will tolerate absolutely no failure in certain areas, such as, for instance, how to worship me. In the minds of these people, I not only demand your worship. I demand it in a specific way. It is not enough that you come to me. You must come to me by a particular path. Should you come to me by another path, any other path, I will reject your love, ignore your entreaties, and, indeed, condemn you to hell. Even though my search for you was sincere, my intent pure, and my understandings the best I could reach? Even though. Yes, even though. In the minds of these people, I am a stringent parent who will accept nothing less than absolute correctness in your understandings of who I am. If you are not correct in the understandings at which you have arrived, I will punish you. You can be as pure in your intent as possible, you can be so filled with love for me that you overflow. I will cast you into the fires of hell nonetheless, and you will suffer there forever if you come to me with the wrong name on your lips, the wrong ideas in your head. It is sad that so many people see you that way. This is not how a friend would behave at all. No, it is not. And so the very idea of having a friendship with God, the kind of relationship you have with your best friend, who will accept anything given in love, forgive everything done in error, that kind of friendship, is unfathomable to them. Then, among those who do see me as their friend, you are right, most of them hold me at a great distance. They do not have a working friendship with me. It is, rather, a very distant relationship that they hope they can count on if they should ever have to. But it is not the day-to-day, hour-to-hour, minute-to-minute friendship that it could be. And you are starting to tell me what it would take to have that kind of friendship with you. A change of mind and a change of heart. That is what it would take. A change of mind and a change of heart. And courage. Courage. Yes. The courage to reject every notion, every idea, every teaching of a God who would reject you. This will take enormous bravery. Because the world has contrived to fill your head with those notions, ideas, and teachings. You will have to adopt a new thought about all of this, a thought that runs counter to virtually everything you've ever been told or heard about me. That'll be tough. For some, that'll be very tough. But it will be necessary, because you can't have a friendship, not a real, not a close, not a working, give-and-take friendship, with someone you fear. So a big part of forging a friendship with God is forgetting our fearship with God. Oh, I like that. That's not an actual word in your language, but I like it. That's exactly what you've had with me all these years, a fearship with God. I know. I was explaining that at the outset. From the time I was a little boy I was taught to be afraid of God. And afraid of God I was. Even when I slipped out of it, I'd get talked back into it. Finally, when I was 19 years old, I'd rejected the God of anger of my youth. Yet I did it not by replacing that God with a God of love, but by rejecting God altogether. You were simply not part of my life. This was in stark contrast to where I was just 5 years earlier. At 14, all I could think about was God. I thought the best way to avoid the wrath of God was to make God love me. I had dreams of going into the priesthood. Everyone thought I was going to be a priest. The sisters at school were sure of it. He has the calling, they said. My mom was sure, too. She watched me set up an altar in our kitchen and don my vestments to play at Saying Massachusetts. Other kids were wearing towels as Superman capes and jumping off of chairs. I imagined the towel as my priestly garment. Then, as I entered my last year of parochial elementary school, my father suddenly put a stop to the whole thing. We were talking about it one day, Mom and I, when Dad happened into the kitchen. "You're not going into the seminary," he interrupted, "so don't get any ideas." "I'm not." I blurted. I was astonished. I'd thought it was a foregone conclusion. "No," Dad said evenly. "Why not?" My mom sat silently. "Because you're not old enough to make that decision," my father declared. "You don't know what you're deciding." "Yes, I do. I'm deciding to be a priest," I cried. "I want to be a priest." "Ah, you don't know what you want," Dad growled. "You're too young to know what you want." Mom finally said something. "Oh, Alex, let the boy have his dreams." Dad was having none of it. "Don't encourage him," he ordered, then shot one of his "this discussion is over" looks at me. "You're not going to seminary. Get it out of your head." I ran out of the kitchen, down the back stairs, and into the backyard. I sought refuge under my beloved lilac tree, the one that anchored the far corner of the yard, the one that bloomed not nearly often enough, not nearly long enough. But it was in bloom then. I remember smelling the incredible sweetness of the purple flowers. I buried my nose in it like Ferdinand the Bull. Then I cried. It wasn't the first time my father had snuffed out the light of joy in my life. At one point I thought I was going to be a pianist. I mean a professional one, like Liberace, my childhood idol. I watched him every week on television. He was from Milwaukee, and everyone in town was agog that a local boy had made it big. There still was not a TV in every home, at least not on Milwaukee's working-class South Side, but, by golly, Dad had managed to buy a 12-inch Emerson with a black-and-white picture tube that looked like a set of parentheses. There I'd sit each week, mesmerized by Liberace's smile, his candelabra, and those ring-laden fingers flying across the keyboard. I had perfect pitch, someone once said. I don't know if that's true or not, but I do know I could sit down at a piano and pick out a simple melody by ear as easily as I could sing it. Every time Mom took us to Grandma's house, I'd beeline it to the upright that hugged one wall of the living room and start plunking out "Mary Had a Little Lamb," or "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." It took me exactly 2 minutes to find the right notes to any new song I wanted to try, then I'd play it over and over again, excited at the deepest part of my being with the music I could make. At this time in my life, and for many years thereafter, I also worshipped my oldest brother, Wayne, who could play the piano without reading music, too. My mom's son from a previous relationship, Wayne was not very much in favor with my dad. In fact, that would be putting it mildly. Anything Wayne liked, Dad hated. Anything Wayne did, Dad put down. Playing piano was, therefore, for bums. I couldn't understand why he kept saying that. I loved playing piano, what little I could do of it at my grandma's, and Mom and everyone else saw that I had obvious talent. Then one day Mom did something incredibly daring. She went out somewhere, or called someone out of the classifieds, or something, and bought an old upright player piano. I remember she'd spent $25 on it, a lot of money in the early 50s, because Dad was upset and Mom said he had no right to be, because she'd scrimped on the grocery money for months and saved up for it. She said she hadn't hurt the family budget at all. She must have had it delivered by the seller, because one day I came home from school and there it was. I was out of my mind with happiness and immediately sat down to play. It didn't take long for that piano to become my best friend. I had to be the only 10-year-old on the South Side who didn't have to be browbeaten into practicing the piano. You couldn't get me away from the thing. Not only was I picking out familiar melodies right and left, I was making them up. The exhilaration of finding songs inside my soul and splashing them across the keyboard was electrifying to me. The most exciting part of my day was when I came home from school or back from the playground and flew to the piano. My father was not nearly as enthusiastic. "Stop pounding on that damned piano" was the way I believe he put it. But I was falling in love with music and my ability to make it. My fantasies of one day becoming a great pianist shifted into high gear. Then I awoke one summer day to a terrible racket. Jumping into my clothes, I scampered downstairs to see what in the heck was going on. Dad was taking the piano apart. Not taking it apart, tearing it apart. Banging on it from the inside with a sledgehammer, then ripping it with a crowbar until the wood heaved and split with a terrible screech. I stood transfixed, utterly shocked. Tears streamed down my cheeks. My brother saw me shaking with silent sobs and couldn't resist. Neale is a cry baby. Dad turned from what he was doing. "Don't be an eepsy peepsy," he said. It was taking up too much room in here. It was time to get rid of it. I turned on my heels and ran to my room, slammed the door, a very dangerous thing for a child to do in my house, and threw myself on the bed. I remember wailing, literally, wailing, "No, no." As if my wretched pleas could save my best friend. But the pounding and ripping continued, and I buried my head in my pillow, heaving with bitterness. I feel the pain of that experience to this day. To this very moment. When I refused to come out of my room for the rest of the day, my father ignored me. But when I would not leave my bed for 3 days more, he grew increasingly aggravated. I could hear him arguing with Mom about her bringing me food. If I wanted to eat, I could come down to the table like everyone else. And if I did come down, I was not to sulk. There was no sulking or pouting allowed in our house, at least not over a decision Dad had made. He considered such a display an open repudiation, and he would not put up with that. In our house, you not only accepted my father's domination, you accepted it with a smile. You keep up that crying and I'll come up there and give you something to cry about. He'd bellow from the bottom floor, and he meant it. When, even after my father's prohibition of meals, I still would not come out, he must have known he'd crossed a line with me that was larger than even he wanted to cross. Dad was not, I should say here, a heartless man, just one very much used to getting his way. He was used to not being questioned, and to not using many niceties in announcing and implementing his decisions. He grew up in an era when being the father meant being the boss, and he didn't suffer gladly any signs of disloyalty. It wasn't easy for him, then, to come to my room, finally, and actually knock on my door, an implied request for permission to enter. I could only guess that my mother must have worked on him pretty hard. "It's Dad," he announced, as if I didn't know, and as if he didn't know that I knew. "I'd like to talk with you." It was as close as he would ever come in his life to an apology to me for anything. "Okay," I managed, and he came in. We talked for a long time, him sitting on the side of the bed, me propped up against the headboard. It was one of the best talks I ever had with my dad. He said that while he knew I liked playing the piano, he hadn't realized it meant so much to me. He said that all he was trying to do was make space in the family room to put our couch along the wall. Because we were getting some new furniture for the living room. Then he said something I'll never forget. "We'll get you a new piano, a spinet, which will be small enough for you to have up here, in your bedroom." I was so excited I could hardly breathe. He said he'd start putting money aside, and that I'd have the piano in no time. I hugged my dad long and hard. He understood me. It was going to be all right. I went downstairs for dinner. Weeks passed and nothing happened. I thought, oh, he's waiting for my birthday. September 10th arrived, and there was no piano. I said nothing. I thought, he's waiting till Christmas. As December approached, I began holding my breath. The anticipation was almost unbearable. So was the incredible letdown when my spinet didn't arrive. More weeks went by, more months. I don't know when it was, exactly, that I realized my father was not going to keep his promise. I do know that it wasn't until I was 30 that I realized he probably never intended to. I had just made a promise to my oldest daughter that I knew I wasn't going to keep. It was to stop her from crying. It was to put her out of some childhood misery that I now can't remember. I don't even remember now what the promise was. I only remember saying something to mollify her. It worked. She threw her little arms around me and cried, "You're the best daddy in the whole wide world." And the sins of the father were visited upon the son. You took a jot of time telling that story. I'm sorry. I know, no, that wasn't a complaint, that was an observation. I merely meant to point out that this episode has obviously become very important to you. It is. It was. And what have you learned from it? Never to make a promise I can't keep. Especially with my children. Is that all? Never to use my knowledge of what someone else wants as a manipulative tool to get something that I want. But people trade with each other all the time. Such trades are the basis of your entire economy, and most of your social interactions. Yes, but there is such a thing as a fair trade and there is such a thing as manipulation. What is the difference? A fair trade is a straightforward transaction. You have something I want, I have something you want, we agree they are of more or less equal value, and so we trade. That's a clean transaction. Then there's exploitation. That's when you have something I want and I have something you want, but they are not of equal value. But we do the trade anyway, one of us desperately, because he needs what the other has and will pay any price. This is what some multinational corporations are doing when they offer 74 cents Lauren hours work in Malaysia, Indonesia, or Taiwan. They call it economic opportunity, but it's exploitation, pure and simple. Finally, there's manipulation. That's when I don't even have any intention of giving you what I am offering. In some cases, this is unconscious. That's bad enough. But in the worst cases, it's done with full awareness that what's being made is a promise one has no intention of keeping. It is a stall, a technique, designed to shut the other person up, to appease them in the here and now. It's a lie, and it's the worst kind of lie, because it soothes a wound that is going to be reopened, deeper, later on. That is very good. You are growing in your understanding of what it is to have integrity. Integrity is important to all systems. If the integrity of any system is faulty, the system itself will collapse. No matter how sophisticated the construction, it cannot hold anything up if its integrity is compromised. Given where you say you wish to go in your life, this is good. Yet what else have you learned? I don't know. Is there something in particular that you're driving at? I was hoping you had also learned something about victimhood. I was hoping you'd remembered the truth, that there are no victims and there are no villains. Oh, that. Yes, that. Why don't you tell me all you know about that? You are the teacher now, you are the messenger. There is no such thing as a victim or a villain. There are no such things as the good guys and the bad guys. God created nothing but perfection. Every soul is perfect, pure, and beautiful. In the state of forgetfulness in which they reside here on earth, God's perfect beings may do imperfect things, or what we would call imperfect things, yet everything that occurs in life occurs for a perfect reason. There is no such thing as a mistake in God's world, and nothing happens by chance. Nor does any person come to you without a gift for you in his hands. Excellent. That is very good. Yet that's a hard one for many people. I know you made it all very clear in the Conversations with God trilogy, but some people are still having a hard time with that. All things become clear in time. Those who seek a deeper understanding of this truth will find it. Reading The Little Soul and the Sun will definitely help, as will rereading the trilogy. Yes, and a number of people would do well to do that, judging from your mail. Wait a minute. You've seen my mail? Please. Oh. Do you imagine there is anything that happens in your life that I don't know about? I suppose not. I just don't like to think about that. Why not? I guess because some of the stuff that's happened is stuff I'm not so proud of. So the idea that you know all about it is a bit discomforting. Help me understand why. You've told your best friends about some of these things through the years. You've had lengthy conversations deep into the night in which you've told your lovers some of these things. That's different. What's different about it? A lover or a friend is not God. A lover or a friend knowing these things is not the same as God knowing these things. Why not? Because a lover or friend is not going to judge you or punish you. I'll tell you something you may not want to hear. Your lovers and friends have judged you and punished through the years a lot more than I ever have. In fact, I never have. Well, no, not yet. But on Judgment Day. Here we go again. Okay, but tell it to me once more. I've got to keep hearing it. There is no such thing as Judgment Day. And no condemnation or punishment, ever. None, except that which you inflict upon yourself. Still, the idea that you know everything I've ever said or done, you forgot everything you've ever thought. Okay, everything I've ever thought, said or done, is not comfortable for me, I wish it were. I know you do. That's what this book is about, how to have a friendship with God. I know. And I do think I now have a friendship with you. I've felt that way for a long time now. It's just that. What? It's just that, what? It's just that once in a while I revert to old patterns, and I sometimes have a hard time thinking of you that way. I still keep thinking of you as God. Good, because I am God. I know. That's the whole point. Sometimes I can't seem to think of you as God and friend in the same breath. I can't seem to put those words in the same sentence. That's very sad, because they belong in the same sentence. I know. You keep telling me. What would it take for you to have a real friendship with me, and not just some kind of artificial one? I don't know. I'm not sure. I know you're not, but if you thought you were, what would your answer be? I guess I'd have to trust you. Good. That's a good start. And I guess I'd have to love you. Excellent. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. I don't know what else to say. What else do you do with your friends, besides trusting them and loving them? Well, I try to be around them a lot. Good. What else? I guess I try to do things for them. To earn their friendship? No, because I am their friend. Excellent. What else? Earn. I'm not sure. Do you let them do things for you? I try to ask as little of my friends as possible. Why? Because I want to keep them my friends. You think keeping friends means asking nothing of them? I think so. Yes. At least, that's what I've been taught. The fastest way to lose friends is to impose on them. No, that's the fastest way to find out who your friends are. Perhaps. Not perhaps. Precisely. A friend is somebody who can't be imposed upon. Everybody else is an acquaintance. Wow, you draw up tough ground rules. Those aren't my rules. Those are your own definitions. You've simply forgotten them. And so you've been mixed up about friendship. A true friendship is something to be used. It's not like the expensive china that never gets used because you're afraid you'll break it. A true friendship is like Corelle ware. You can't break it no matter how many times you use it. I have a hard time going there. I know you do, and that's the problem. That's why you've not had a functioning friendship with me. So how can I get over that? You've got to see the truth about all interactions. You've got to understand how things really work, and why people do the things they do. You've got to come to clarity about some basic principles in life. That's what this book is about. I'm going to help you. But we've completely lost track of where we were. You were talking about there being no victims and no villains. We haven't lost track of anything. It's all the same discussion. I don't get it. Hang on a minute, you will. Okay. So how can I have a friendship with God? Do the same things you would do if you had a friendship with another. Trust you. Trust me. Love you. Love me. Be around you a lot. Yes, invite me over. Maybe even for a long stay. Do things for you, although I don't have the faintest idea what I could do for you. There's plenty. Believe me, there is plenty. Okay. And the last thing, let you do things for me. Not only let me. Ask me. Require me. Command me. Command you. Command me. I have a hard time with that one too. I can't even imagine doing that. That's the whole problem, my friend. That's the whole problem.